Hey there, Jordan Chariton, live. Status Coup. It is Tuesday, the September 6th, 2022. Delighted to be joined by the labor man himself, Steve Grumbine. Fresh off of Labor Day, the start of fall, as we continue to pummel into another election cycle. And we have a growing water crisis that we're going to go heavy on in today's show. We have Lewis coming on in a few minutes. Lewis, independent journalist who's been doing God's work down in Jackson, Mississippi for Status Coup. Steve, we like to go places when the cameras leave. And we don't actually have to wait too long because typically for these kind of stories, the cameras go there for a few days. Maybe you'll get a week and then they leave. We see this for mass shootings and now water crisis. So mainstream media covered this Jackson water crisis, which has really been going on for a long time, not just like the last week. But now, from what I'm hearing and seeing, they're already leaving. So kind of creates a void for Status Coup to cover it. So we'll bring on Lewis in a few minutes, show some of his clips. There's also arsenic situation in New York City, arsenic in the water that the New York City authorities knew about for weeks, but didn't tell the residents. Interestingly enough, they're mostly low-income Black people that were not told that they and their children were drinking arsenic. So we're going to show you some of that. We also have Union Man Joe gave a speech yesterday on Labor Day. He's feeling, I don't know what they're giving him, but they've given him an extra dose of something because he's really sowing his oats out there. He's really loving life. So he gave a speech on Labor Day. Most of it was pure nonsense and marketing. So we'll get into that. And if the technology works, because who knows, we'll try again taking calls live through call-in through the call-in app on the YouTube channel. We'll do that in a bit. But first, Steve, tell people, because I like to do it at the top too, Real Progressives, Real Progress in Action. Where could people find your work?
Yeah, thanks. So, come to our website, realprogressives.org. Go on to YouTube. We have two channels. We have Real Progress in Action YouTube channel. That's where most of our non just pure educational work goes. That's where our hot takes and our rants and other discussion points go. And then the Real Progressives channel is actually mostly educational videos. Videos that we've done with the podcast and so forth. So check us out over there. And please check out the podcast Macro and Cheese that comes out on Saturday mornings and the Rogue Scholar that is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12 noon Eastern time at Real Progress in Action YouTube channel.
Wonderful. All right, let me set it up before I bring Lewis on. Louis DeAngelis, who's been doing great work for us. He was covered Uvalde on the ground. He's covered a lot of things down in Texas for us. He drove 9 hours to Jackson, Mississippi, and he's down there covering the water crisis, which there's more than poison in the water. It seems that there's a bit of a poisonous government down in Mississippi. But before we bring him on, I just want to play just kind of some of his interviews, like kind of give you a little snapshot of the mood on the ground there. Colin, if we could show.
So I'm here with Candace with the ACLU of Mississippi. ACLU of Mississippi is actually sponsoring this food truck here. We're at one of the water distribution sites. I guess if you want to just talk a little bit about what's going on here, the site here, and kind of what you all have been up to.
Yeah, so we know that this impact here to the city is impacting people in South and West Jackson even more than other parts of the city. So we decided to sponsor some food trucks to also bring some food to people because, as we all know, that this also impacting the way that people are able to cook at home and like not just some hot dogs, but like real good food. So on Friday we had a barbecue truck out at one of the centers at Oak Forest Community Center. On Saturday we had One Guy Steak and Chicken over at Sykes Community Center, and then today we have Green Ghost Tacos here, giving out fajitas, like really good food that everybody can take home and enjoy in this moment of crisis as well. Because that's just the added hardship is trying to figure out out how do I cook as well. So we're trying to just alleviate some of that.
Absolutely.
The response
and so far from the government, whether it be at the local level, the state level, have they kind of provided any answers as to like how they're going to fix this?
The local level, they're not saying anything. We get more response from outside to support us. But the local level, they're not saying anything because they're too busy fighting amongst each other and blaming each other instead of just coming down, putting everything to the side and fixing the solution. Instead of taking the money and using it for lawsuits and everything else that it don't need to be used for. So then when we come up with this problem, we ain't get no money because they done used all the money. Whether, the government is either abusing it and ain't nothing getting done about that. So when we need it, here it is, all the poor people got to come together, try to help each other, and then hope outside come in and help us, which, it's been a blessing.
A quote from the governor that essentially said, if the residents of Jackson paid their water bills, they wouldn't have boil water notices.
Right, and we pay our water bills.
Yeah.
And I haven't been affected with the high water bill, but I've had members at our church who are elderly people, so we know they're not using a whole lot of water, and they're using the same consistent water.
Right.
And last month your water bill might have been $45, $50, $60, but then here you come with an $1,800 water bill.
Right.
And that shouldn't be so.
Is that something people have actually seen that high?
Yes.
For water that you can't drink?
For water that you can't drink.
$1,800.
And water that you didn't use. So.
That's
let's bring him on. Lewis, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, considering the circumstances here. I'm at the fairground, the Mississippi State Fairgrounds in Jackson. You can see some of the line in the background here, although they're doing something weird, moving the lanes around. But that's downtown Jackson in the background. Yeah, I mean, you played some of the stuff from yesterday. That was I got into town yesterday afternoon and went to one of the water distribution sites that was run by the state, and then there's also a volunteer effort going on there. Run by Danielle, who's been on the show before, and you've interviewed once recently and then once about a year ago. And then, the ACLU of Mississippi had set up that food truck where folks were going, get a good hot meal, because some of this water crisis, like it affects a lot more than just your drinking water. I mean, folks cooking at home, like there's so many extra steps involved in everything right now, but the overall sense that I'm getting from people, and like it's a sense of abandonment, basically. People feel like they've been left to fend for themselves, and I mean, being here, it certainly seems like it. Like, other than these little water distribution centers where you can go wait in line for however long, this one's actually moving pretty quickly right now. But this morning I saw one that it must have taken folks a half an hour or more to get through to get one case of water. Yeah, I mean, that's about all that's happening. I talked to one family. They didn't want to get on camera, but there was a 14-year-old boy who, like, half joking, but like the mom was like, "Oh no, you're right." He said he feels like that the country just sacrificed Jackson. We're just leaving. We've got all these problems going on all over the place, but they're just kind of ignoring this one. No one's talking about it. So yeah, I mean, this is the first story like this that I've covered. And Jordan, I've always a little bit wondered, man, why does Jordan seem so angry and pissed off about some of this stuff? But I've get it now. This is unconscionable that in America in 2022, not only can people not drink the water for a week or two, for some people in Jackson, they've been boiling their water because of notices and whatnot, depending on which area you're in, for more than weeks, but months. And a lot of people are rightfully afraid to shower in it. I don't know if one of those clips got played right there or not, but I spoke with several people yesterday and today who have young kids. How do you tell an infant or a toddler to keep the water out of their mouth in the shower? So now you're boiling water to bathe your children. I talked to one woman who has a 4-year-old, and she's like, I have to my 4-year-old doesn't get how serious it is. So I have to constantly be like, no, don't drink that water. You have to drink the water out of the faucet. Or you have to drink the water out of the bottles. It's an absolute shame, and folks no one sees an end to it. That's the thing, and the communication as to how long this is going to last, and not only how long is this one going to last, but how do we prevent the next one from happening, is kind of yet to be heard by anybody here.
And you've come to the right place. You got two angry men with you, me and Steve. And honestly, looking at this, it really it's just deja vu to me of 2016 and Flint.
Mhm.
I even noticed, I mean, you would know better, you're there. At least on TV, they're not covering it as much, and it's only been a few days. They were covering it a lot before Labor Day. Now they've kind of moved on. Maybe you could tell me, does it seem like there's as much media coverage on the ground there?
I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I have not seen a single media camera I've been to 3 different water sites at this point, 3 of the 5. I have not seen a single other media camera anywhere. I was live on TikTok just before this to try to get some folks over here. And there's actually like a little media area set up over there. It's kind of loud. There's like a generator. So I just was like, I'm going to come over here. But I was laughing like, oh, they've got a media area set up and everything for it. Like they're expecting folks to come. But apparently nobody gives a shit anymore. I was talking with some family on my drive over here, and they were all like, "You're going to Mississippi for what?" Like that's and I mean, these are like some of those family members are people who generally pay attention. Like they watch the news, but apparently this is not getting out there. I mean, I was at a senior center today with there were some volunteers taking deliveries from one of the other distribution centers and actually delivering it to the senior center. And they've been doing deliveries across the city because unless you have a vehicle, these water distribution centers are not really feasible for you. It's not like there's like a public bus that takes you here or anything like that. So there are these volunteer-led initiatives to actually deliver water to people who can't get to these sites. But otherwise, if it weren't for these volunteers, deliveries would not be happening. Other than like, you know, these are volunteers renting U-Hauls. And I will say there's some coordination with the city. I think the city is renting the U-Hauls and whatnot. But like, these are people who have been volunteering their time for many of them weeks. There's one person who I was talking to who's been running a water station for almost 3 months at this point, giving water to people long before any of these, you know, state funded and you know, stations were set up like this. But I mean, at the senior center, I spoke with a woman. She was probably in her late 60s. And she is fortunate to have a vehicle. Most people at that facility do not. And they were all running low at this facility on water. So she went and drove over to the state facility that I was at this morning and went through and explained, hey, I'm here from a senior center and we're running low on water. And they're like, sorry, 1 case per car.
And
so she tried.
How hot is it down there?
I mean, it's compared to in Austin, I'm kind of used to it, but it's 90s and humid, so it's hot as fuck. And again, it's not like you can get away with drinking a little bit of water. You need a lot of water to be doing anything. And again, it'd be one thing if you're just drinking it, like, okay, you can probably get away with a case of water, you know, for however long. But again, these people are cooking with it. A lot of them are afraid to shower, so they're bathing with it. One woman, again, it's all kind of becoming a blur, that I spoke with yesterday. She's disabled and has a husband who's disabled. She's like, I'm not risking taking a shower in it because I'm worried that my health insurance isn't going to cover some of the stuff if I end up in the hospital because of this, because I get some sort of disease or sickness from the water. So it's really just one thing on top of the other.
I want to bring Steve in, but first off, I'm glad you're getting angry. You're a little too fucking nice on camera. I've told you that. So you need a little anger, and there's nothing like traveling the United Corporations of America to get you angry. So I'm glad you're learning, young man. Steve, stick around, Lewis. Don't go anywhere. Steve, as we talk about, the federal government prints money. If they wanted to, they could dig up all the pipes around the country. It would cost several $1 trillion to do it. But on the state and local level, they cannot print money. However, in this situation, I'm sorry to say, and I think you're seeing it, Lewis, Steve, this is clear environmental racism. I would just call it racism. The governor of Mississippi, who to me looks like a Klansman in a sweater vest, Tate Reeves, he has essentially, without getting into the whole history, there's white flight. After desegregation, white people fled Jackson, which used to be very white and wealthy. The taxpayer base cratered, and the state government has essentially even blocked Jackson from raising sales tax even by 1% to help fund infrastructure. The governor has vetoed bills that would give water relief to Jackson residents. The governor has vetoed bills for things like parks in Jackson. He's vetoed bills for things like hospital upgrades in Jackson. Jackson's 82% black. It's the capital city, the biggest city in Mississippi. His budget gives a lot of money to parks for white wealthy suburbs. His budget gives money to the surrounding suburbs. He, last year, because they had a water shutdown in March of last year, like Texas, a cold, unusually cold weather caused the shutdown in Mississippi. The governor said to the people of Jackson, maybe you should pay your water bills before asking the state for more money. Steve, your thoughts, because this is beyond just the federal Michugas, as my grandma would say. This is state level. The governor has, and the state legislature has the purse strings, and they've been blocking the black city leadership who cannot print money because Jackson has 25% poverty. What's your thoughts, Steve?
Well, as I was listening, I was envisioning two gates. One of them has a whole bunch of shit going on, just cramming more unnecessary steps, more unnecessary volunteers, more unnecessary nonsense into one side. And the other side is like this door that's unlocked. There's no one there. And all they have to do is step through that door and it'd be fixed. And so you hear this, what takes an hour to get through, because no one understands that the federal government is doing this on purpose. No one understands that the states understand this, and no one understands that they can ask for more and must demand more. In my opinion, there's nothing more important than the economic story here, because that's why you're not getting what you need there, period. And because we don't understand this, and thank you, Jordan, for being probably the only major outlet that actually covers this kind of information.
Excuse me. Do not thank me, Lewis.
Oh, Lewis, I'm talking about Status Coup in general.
His slender frame is the one on the ground. But go ahead.
Lewis, thank you so much for doing this work. And because you probably haven't heard me before, I just want to say for the record, we looked at Detroit, Michigan, and Flint. We looked down at Puerto Rico when the hurricanes hit and it had to be completely rebuilt. We looked at the beaches in Jersey when the major storms came through there and destroyed it. We've looked all across the country at all of these different destructions. And what they do is they purposely withhold the kind of funding they could do, and they allow it to become a for-profit grab bag. Okay. And so they know what they're doing. This is not an accident at all, but you heard every one of these people talk. It's like, why don't they just this or why don't they just that? And it seems so logical to just simply give them fucking water. But the fact is that most people have no idea that the federal government actually could just take care of this right away. And so they will spin all these yarns, come up with all these spaghetti logic ideas, how to just fucking send the goddamn federal government down there, declare it a motherfucking emergency, and then fucking pay for it. And don't even wait. Don't wait 5 minutes. And everybody, you all, I don't know how many of you are watching this right now, but every one of you all need to be getting on top of your representatives, your local media, writing letters to your radio stations, doing whatever you have to do, because this kind of scenario that Lewis is uncovering right here is soup du jour. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. And everybody is just as clueless as those poor people that are sitting there suffering, have no idea how to fix it. They just know that something bad happened. If they just would do this instead of that, everything would be okay. Fucking send the motherfucking federal government in there to do its job and spend the goddamn money right now, not 5 minutes ago, not after a bunch of hand wringing, not a bunch of talk. Do it right the fuck now. And that right there this is that simple. It's that simple. But because everyone's fucking spinning in circles, can we get enough volunteers? Can we get more water to donate? Guys, can we donate some money? I mean, it's like, your fucking federal government, do your job. It's like, come on now. Why not?
I saw, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but the White House press secretary went on when asked, what should the governor of Mississippi be doing more? And she said, well, we already just sent them $75 million to the state of Mississippi for clean water initiatives. And also earlier this year in I think it was the infrastructure bill, we also sent $445 billion that will be given to them over the next, or 445 million that will be given to them over the next 10 years. So we've already given them water for, or money for clean water initiatives. So that should be enough to fix a $1 billion problem. Is 400 million 10 years from now.
Lewis, I want to point something out because a lot of people don't understand this. Well, first, I want to point out two things. Number one, boil water alerts. A lot of people don't realize if you have lead problems or you have heavy metal problems in water, which Jackson a few years ago, there was lead in the water. There probably still is because they're all lying about the numbers. If you boil your water, it makes it more concentrated, lead and other heavy metals. So it might be getting rid of bacteria while creating a lead problem. Look it up if you don't know the science. I didn't know the science, but boil water alerts. If you have lead and high doses of copper and other heavy metals in there, you're making it more concentrated. So that is not a one-size-fits-all fix, and it eliminates everything. In some cases, it makes it worse. But Colin, if we could show this from the Vice story we did a couple of years ago, because a lot of people don't realize, Steve, you probably do, that when you hear that the federal government is sending states money, guess what? They're sending it to the governor and the legislature, not directly to the city. If you have the Vice story, it's in the live stream doc column. So in Flint's case, they had $370 million of state money allocated. If you could go down to the section that I put in the live stream, just Control F, you could put Uptown. They had $370 million earmarked from the state legislature to go to Flint. Lewis, guess how much of that went to the city of Flint? Just take a guess.
Maybe 10%.
75 million of $370 million went to Flint. And that was the state money. Let me read some of this. Colin, go up a little bit. Keep going. On top of the Snyder administration having allegedly raided Flint's rainy day fund, financial information released from July 2019 explaining where $389 million of state funds allocated for Flint water relief went revealed that only 75 million went to Flint. The remaining 314 went to law firms, state agencies, different Genesee County departments, hospitals, banks, and a slew of other destinations. Unrelated to Flint water. I could go on and on. My point is, this shit happens everywhere. Rental relief money that was supposed to go to states and cities, half of it's sitting there and probably being diverted to donors and foundations. And in the case of Mississippi, the federal government has sent money to the governor down there to go to Jackson. And from what I'm reading, not a lot of it has gone to Jackson. If you could fill us in what you found out.
Yeah, no, and I mean, in that instance, and then in other instances too, I mean, the governor will send the money back saying, we don't want to get folks used to having some liberal handout. So there's been opportunities for folks to have relief for rental. And then even, I mean, on water as well, the Mississippi legislature passed a bipartisan bill. I talked with Danielle about this earlier today. We'll have video of it at some point after this. I uploaded it earlier, but there was a bipartisan bill in the Mississippi legislature that went to the governor's desk that would have paid off all of the residents' water bills. After several years ago, there was a major billing problem that was the fault of the city and the water department, no fault of the residents, where everyone's bills were being sent out and they were all incorrect and all of them were higher than they should have been. So to try to solve the problem essentially with the billing, the legislature came together, said we're going to essentially pay off all of this debt, which would have given money to the water system to be able to try to do some upgrades and whatnot. It got to the governor's desk and he vetoed it for the same reason. I don't want people to get into the habit of having the government come and pay their bills for them. And when I talk to people too, and I mentioned that,
but he does want them to get in the habit of making $7.25 an hour, because that's the minimum wage in Mississippi. It's still $7.25.
And guess what that buys you? Not even a case of water at the grocery store when you can find one here, because a case of water there is roughly $8 that I saw today.
Wow.
So that's why, again, you can't afford to be doing that, especially, again, I'm talking to people with 6 kids at home Again, minimum wage $7.25. I mean, hopefully they're making a little bit more than that. Hopefully, if they've got a job. I mean, it's a dire situation, and beyond the water too. I mean, the city's got all sorts of infrastructure problems going on in general. It's something that I've seen and that people have mentioned. I mean, the roads here are like I drive a Tacoma, and like you can sink right into one of these potholes in some areas. You'll get to parts of the street in main streets in downtown Jackson, and it turns into an obstacle course, and no one drives in the lanes. You're just weaving through potholes everywhere. So, if they haven't dug up the street, someone made this point earlier today. They were like, if the streets look like that and the water pipes are underneath the streets, so that means they haven't dug up the streets in however long to do anything to these water pipes. It's insane.
Thank you for joining us. A few things for the audience. Number one, give this man a follow. I just put his Twitter in the super chat. So definitely follow Lewis so you can get updates on the ground. He's going to be there all week. Again, we go places when the media leaves. And this is deja vu because the media and Rachel Maddow, they covered Flint for 5 minutes in 2016. And then they went back to Donald Trump and his empty podiums and the rest of it. And we all know how Flint's doing 8 years later. When the media stops covering what should be still leading the front pages in the wealthiest country on earth, that an American city has no water. Now they're saying the water's back and the pressure's back. Bullshit. I could tell you, and I'm not even there because I know how this story ends. The water, once the cameras start leaving, once the media stops covering, that's when the cover-up happens. That's when the money earmarked for Jackson relief gets diverted elsewhere, and that's when the media starts regurgitating, oh, the data says it's better, and oh, everything's getting better. Lewis, any parting words before you go?
Yeah, I mean, share some of these interviews and stuff with your friends. Get the word out there, because if people actually hear about shit like this that's happening, I mean, there's maybe a chance. Otherwise, like I started this off, I mean, these folks here in Jackson, they couldn't be kinder, they couldn't be nicer, but they feel absolutely abandoned by their country, and they need the help. So anything we can do to get some of this out there, spread the word. I mean, it's a shame that I wish that, as bad of a job I think the mainstream media does, I wish they were here because they could help get the message out, right? So get some of this out there, tell people about it. If you're close by, I mean, literally, if surrounding states drop some water off, I mean, it actually helps. I was fortunate to be able to load up the back of my truck with a bunch, and I've been giving it to folks who are kind of some of the folks that I've met who are dropping it off in different areas. So, but the main thing has got to be get the message out there, because it's unconscionable that no one has any clue what's going on here, and I have not seen a single person other than myself from the media at all talking about this story.
Thanks, man. We'll be posting more of your content. We'll have you on again live throughout the week. Have a good rest of the night.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And quick promo. There's a reason the media doesn't want to cover it. A, they don't care about poor people. B, they don't care about poor people. C, they don't care about poor people. And D, they don't want to spend the money covering poor people. So we do A, B, C, D, and it costs money. Obviously, we're paying Lewis. We do other on-the-ground reporting. We covered the Labor Day rally in New York City the other day. We have another water story from John Farina. All this costs money. We have new hosts. So if you can, support us, because we cover what the corporate media covers up. StatusCoup.com/join. We're going to do our members only call either later this week or next week. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for $5 to $10 a month. Steve, I also want to bring up, because now we're hearing the wonderful religion. The solution is privatize the thing. Colin, if we can play Governor Reeves on possibly privatizing Jackson's water.
Second question, if you would be supportive of any privatization efforts of the Jackson water system. You've talked about your concerns about the management from the city.
I'm open to all options. Privatization is on the table. Having a commission that oversees failed water systems, as they have in many states, is on the table. So again, I'm open to ideas. I'm open to conversation. I'm open to discussion. I don't go into those conversations lightly.
Steve, I don't know about you, but anywhere I've seen privatized water, good luck, because there's less regulations, less transparency. And by the way, there's not a ton of regulations and transparency with public water either. And quality suffers. But when he says I'm open to it, to me, unless there's media that actually hold him accountable, Jackson, your water's going to be privatized soon, meaning the situation will probably become worse.
Look, this is not a secret, Jordan. I mean, this is the game plan. This is the blueprint. This is straight out of the neoliberal playbook. Government must be made to be feckless. It must be made to be incompetent. It must be made to be completely and utterly useless so that we say, yes, dear God, someone in the private sector come save us from our horrible feckless government. And so what do? They starve the beast. They intentionally say, I don't know what to tell you. And then they go ahead and privatize it. This is the playbook, folks. We're exporting this to Australia. We're exporting this to places like the UK. We're exporting this around the world. This is the United States neoliberal laboratory where we literally push neoliberalism around the world. That's what we do to all the global South countries. We have literally created a situation where their governments fail, intentionally fail, because we fuck with their currency, we screw with their means of production, we enslave them with public debt that is debt denominated in another currency. We literally make everyone in this position where there's no other choice. There is no alternative, to quote the dear Margaret Thatcher, than privatization. There is no such thing as public money. There is only taxpayer dollars. This pathetic, disgraceful, disgusting, revolting, and repulsive line, the taxpayer dollars, my hard-earned tax dollars, fuels this entire fucking charade. Okay, this worthless, my hard-earned tax dollar. That is what's keeping the water from being drinkable. That is the whole concept there, to make it so that these taxpayers feel like they've been cheated by, once again, a feckless government, and they're going to ride in, they're going to sell this off, they're going to earn money in through privatization, and the people are once again going to be slaves to a profit motive. This, folks, if you don't get this down, if you don't start mentally programming this come each election cycle, when you start making all kinds of excuses for the most pathetic candidates, because you don't know this stuff that I'm talking about, the federal government fucking is the money creator. It is the money spender. It is the source from all money. And they intentionally starve these states, and these states intentionally push the federal government money away because they want it to fail. They need it to fail. They need it to fail so that they can privatize it. This is the entire end game, folks. This is your libertarians. Everybody wants to make buds with the libertarians. That's your libertarians. That's your libertarian right there. That's the whole game, set, match. Destroy anything that's public, make everything private, and then make you, once again, having to pay to go block by block on a private road, putting your quarter in the machine, and each landowner says, well, I want to charge you $5. Oh, hold on. I want to charge you $5 to go ahead and do whatever. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't wisen up to the neoliberal strategy, if you don't wisen up to the fact that the federal government never runs out of money, can never run out of money because it creates the money. If you don't really, really think that through and keep that near and dear to your hearts, and every time a politician comes out there and says they don't know how they're going to pay for it, we're going to have to raise taxes and all this other shit. No, they're lying to you, and they're setting the stage for the next water crisis. And there's people like our dear friend out there, Mr. Holden, who will sit there and come up with some insanity about the Federal Reserve. Guys, fucking keep the conspiracy shit with Alex Jones. Stay in the real, stay in the actionable, save these people's lives. Make sure that you don't pay attention to idiots that fucking push that kind of crappy conspiracy. Fucking focus on getting the money from the federal government to these places. Now, I mean, it's throughout the entire country, folks. We should, this student debt thing, all these things, it's a big fucking lie. It's a big lie. And we've been buying it hook, line, and sinker. And every single time we buy it one more time. And invariably, there'll be activists out there. My hard-earned tax dollars shouldn't go to Ukraine. I'm willing to pay more for someone else to have health care. I mean, stop. The federal government creates the fucking money. It could do this now, not all this swirling around and spinning up. It could do it now. And I got to tell you, this is a shot across the bow to some of my friends, fellow travelers. There are people that are doing quite well. And it's tough to be an activist when you're not doing well. When you have rough financial situation, it's tough to be an activist because your immediate needs come ahead of these people that have lots of money and that have the long game in mind. They can wait 20, 30 years for everybody to get on board. For people down there that need water, they need it now. I'm tired of the privileged people telling us to slow down and wait. I'm tired of them telling me to shut my mouth and be kind and gentle. You guys need to wake up. These people are suffering because everyone believes the country's broke. They believe this nonsense. And because they believe it, those people have shit for water. This is constant. We must change it and not wait 20 years or 30 years for while the rich people have enough 5-star dinners to negotiate their treaties with each other. No, us fucking poor people, us people that are struggling, us people that don't have the world by the short hairs need to rise the fuck up, tell the rich people that know this stuff but are okay waiting 10, 20 years to fucking stay out of the way, let us fucking get some shit done and fight back. I'm telling you, they're murdering people. So if they're murdering people, what do you think we should be doing? I'm not saying to murder. I'm saying we should not be just sitting back going, well, how come it's happened? It's so unfair. Oh, my goodness. It's just, if we just raised some tax dollars, if we could just pay for some more tax dollars. Stop. Fucking get smart and get militant and make these things stop happening. Make them stop happening now, not in 20 years when the rich people are okay with it. Now, right this fucking second.
2 year long monologue. I say,
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed.
and I also say,
enough is enough. Enough is enough.
A couple things before we move on, and we're also going to take your calls and try to do it quickly because I only have Steve for like 20 more minutes. Number one, to people who say this isn't a race issue, Jordan, this is a class issue. I don't know what history books you're reading. Race and class, they're kind of intertwined in many ways. So don't tell me this is it's just a class issue. It's not a race issue. Listen, I've been around the country for 7 years. All right. I've been to 35 or so states. I've been to a whole lot of cities. Most of the water issues, and there's water problems everywhere. But I'm talking the acute, disastrous. You got pipes that are over 100 years old under the ground. They're not in white communities. They're in black and brown communities. There are places like West Virginia that got bad water because of coal mountain removal and a whole lot of other things. But the state governments make decisions and they discard and disregard the health mostly of, yes, poor people, but add a cherry on top when it's black and brown poor people. You don't see this happening where they can't drink the water or it's a disaster in white communities. Yes, there are problems with water and many other things in white communities, in poor white communities, but I have not yet seen, and I've traveled a lot, a white community having these kind of problems. So don't give me a lecture that this is, it's not race, Jordan, it's class. It's both. Number two, and Colin, I'm just going to read the amazing tweet thread from Jordan Chariton from earlier because this is the playbook. What's happening right now in Jackson, Mississippi is what happened in Flint. And if it happens in a community near you, this is what will happen. Thread, just like what happened in Flint around now, about a week of major coverage, which Rachel Maddow got an award for coming to Flint and doing a town hall and then leaving and giving us Russiagate for 5 years. Just like what happened in Flint and around now, about a week of major coverage is when national media will stop covering the Jackson water crisis and begin lazily regurgitating cherry-picked, manipulated water data and public relations coming from the state government that caused the crisis. They will move from broadcast and digital coverage to occasional news article updates, which will become less and less frequent until the story is completely out of the news. The void of news, interviews with residents, or investigative reporting into who caused the crisis, who and what entities have profited, because somebody's profiting, and it's usually more than one, who's covering it up, the ongoing racism behind it, and the disastrous health effects on residents, will ultimately leave Jackson eerily similar to Flint, which is still very much an ongoing crisis. Despite bullshit media headlines, Flint's water is still toxic 8.5 years later. All the corroded water pipes have not been replaced. Residents are getting sicker and dying, many of whom that I have known are now dead. And the most disheartening part from a journalistic point of view, like has happened with me personally many times in my Flint reporting, there will be journalists who dig up and are ready to break major investigative bombshells on the Jackson water crisis, who have great sources and documents, who get turned down by the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, Daily Beast, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC, BuzzFeed, Newsweek, and the rest. The outlet's editors, mostly wealthy, white, cosmopolitan types, far disconnected from places like Flint and Jackson, will all give different weak and disingenuous excuses like, we don't have the resources and bandwidth to cover it. Or, weren't these things already kind of known? That's my favorite. When they say, what weren't this information that you're bringing to me from documents from a criminal investigation? Weren't they kind of already known? No, they weren't. That's why I'm bringing them to you. Number 3, we don't really use freelancers, even outlets that do use freelancers. Is there a Trump connection? That I was asked by several outlets when I brought them bombshell Flint stories, even though it happened under Obama, technically. Number 5, for the amount of resources we'd have to invest in editing or legal review, we can't do it, i.e., we don't see the clicks. The story happened so long ago, we don't feel there's enough viewer-reader interest. Well, maybe there's not enough viewer interest or reader interest because you haven't covered it in 5 years. And my dog ate my homework is why they can't cover it anymore. Newsflash. As someone who has spent 50% of my career covering water contamination and government cover-ups, there are many Jacksons and Flints. Water infrastructure in America is 50 to 75 years old. In many places, like Jackson, it's over 100 years old. Most water treatment plants are also very old with outdated equipment or lack of critical equipment to safely treat water for safe drinking water consumption. Water plants are also understaffed or staffed with inexperienced workers. Beyond the aging, corroded lead service lines, there's also the major issue of industrial corporate pollution into waterways that are barely regulated by EPA or state agencies. There's also the issue of water departments cheating on water testing to produce lower lead and other heavy metal levels, and they don't even test for a lot of the hazardous contaminants. Smart folks on Wall Street know how bad the water situation is in America. That's why they're heavily trading water as a commodity, expecting an eventual shortage. And that's the article I sent you, Colin. That, guess what? Now they're trading water on the stock market, just like oil and gold and the rest of them. Steve, I apologize for that diatribe. But unfortunately, you know what? At the end of the day, it might sound cheesy, but water actually is life. If you don't have water, you're going to die. And if you're drinking bad water, you're going to die a little slower from the water. Toxic water has been linked to breast cancer, other forms of cancer, miscarriages, Parkinson's, epilepsy, autoimmune, the whole gamut. So this should be leading the news. It's not. They're already deserting the story, and that's a fucking shame. It's a disgrace. And I'm actually working on a book, which is part of why we're expanding here. I need time to work on the book about my Flint water reporting and cover-up. But I'll tell you what, it's not just the water that's poison. It's our government and it's our media. And I'm even calling out independent outlets. Do they cover this? Barely. Shame on all of you. You got poor people, poor black people that, they're having to boil their water. They're having to stand online for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. They're having to hop around church to church to get one case of water. It's kind of normalized, kind of like the mass shootings. Oh, that's too bad. Let me move on to my next TikTok video. Your thoughts before we move on?
No, I really don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, you just nailed it. I mean, that's exactly correct. And, I feel like, I just wish that people had that more systems mindset to see how the flows work. If you could see where it starts and where it ends, it would help bring about a whole bunch of change. I mean, a massive amount of change, and it's change that we need. Because right now, these people get away with this stuff right in the daylight. I mean, they don't even have to hide it anymore because most people really, truly do not understand how the system works. So as a result of that, they get away and just like broad daylight with this criminal behavior. And few people sounding like crazy fools yelling and screaming, they just get marginalized and checked out, while those people sitting there starving, no water, literally being predated upon, because there's profit waiting for this problem to be fixed, right? I mean, this problem is a profit motive, and it would go right under GDP. They would celebrate the rise and, hey, we're not in a recession anymore. We fixed the water problem. So, Jordan, I think you nailed it. Bottom line.
All right. I just launched the call-in so we could take callers. We want to take your calls on this, as well as Biden gave quite the labor speech yesterday during Labor Day. I don't know what the White House has given him. They're giving him an extra something because, boy, is he perking up. He's loving life, going around the country now, pretending to be a union guy and a friend of the workers. But he gave a union speech yesterday, so we want to take your calls on the water crisis, on Biden's baloney union speech, and other things. We got about 15 minutes left with Steve. So go to call in. Colin's putting the link in the super chat, and raise your hand to call in, and we'll pipe you right through on the YouTube show. Before we get our first caller, Colin, if you could play some of President Biden's best hits from yesterday.
Well, I think this is getting to be a pretty good year for a Labor Day. There's no question it's been a hard few years, but we've come a long way. Today, COVID no longer controls our lives. More Americans are working any time than all of American history. Last year, more people applied to start small business than any year in history. But it didn't just happen. We never gave up. We never gave in. And we are delivering for working and middle-class Americans now. Health. Let me close with this. We're at a serious moment in our nation's history. And it's not I mean it from the bottom of my heart. As I said last week, we remain in the battle for the soul of America. By the way, all right, God love you. Let him go. Let him go.
All right, that's good.
No.
So, soul of America, things are good, COVID's over, and we're coming back. By the way, we're about to be in another recession. By the way, most of the jobs that have come back are shitty, non-living wage jobs. By the way, Colin, if you have the charts, income inequality, look at the red line. That's us compared to Europe, Western Europe. That's your great labor market right there. That's income inequality. If you could show the other chart, Colin, we have the rate of unionization in the United Corporations of America, once at around 20% in 1985, now about 10%, maybe a little higher than 10%. So this is what we get, Steve, a bunch of marketing and bullshit slogans. The media elevates it with bullshit markers and measurements. GDP is good. Oh, unemployment's low. Oh, the stock market's doing well. Biden's got his mojo back. How's it going to play out in the midterms? Meanwhile, most people are working multiple jobs or working longer hours. Inflation's killing people. It's a real mess. Since I don't have you too much longer, let me bring on the first caller so we could hear what they think about this. Chris, you are up. You got to unmute your mic.
Hello?
Hey there.
Hey, first of all, glad to be here. Call-in shows. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I have you. Okay. Yeah, so first thing is I want to ask Steve a question. Hold on to this question. But what do you think of, instead of using federal taxes to pay for things, federal tax the rich to punish the rich? Because if we just let them, if we don't tax them, then those keep building this enormous wealth that they can just buy off the politicians again. This is why in the 50s and 60s you were able to have a lower level of corruption, because there wasn't such a funnel to the 1%. Besides that, if Biden wants to be pro-union, the PRO Act passed the House over a year ago. He needs to get the PRO Act passed in the Senate. And maybe, since Manchin is being a little bit, maybe if you pick up a few seats in the Senate, maybe Biden could be pushed a little bit, but I'm not counting on it. And lastly, the whole COVID's over bullshit. I know people who are dealing with potential long COVID symptoms and can't get treatment for it.
Yeah. All right, Steve. I remember two of the questions. You go for the first. Okay.
No, so the fact is that if you start off one step behind what you just said, because what you just said is really fantastic. Okay. If you decouple spending bills from taxing, because they don't have any relationship to each other at all. So if you decouple them and you use taxes for what they're purpose for, I mean, there's an old 1946 speech by former Fed President Beardsley Rummel, and he talked about how now that we're on a free-floating fiat, which you can't debase, basically, et cetera, because it's no longer pegged to a base. So you can't debase something without a base, right? The fact is that we could tax the living shit out of the rich. We could literally put what we call Pigovian taxes and sin taxes that are served to guide and structure the way we want the society to operate. However, the problem is that we put taxes with healthcare. We put taxes with Medicare for all. We put taxes with a Green New Deal. We put taxes with free college, things like that. They're not related to one another, and they need to not be related, because what happens is that any decent Republican or any decent neoliberal centrist Democrat can literally knock your bill down by telling the people they're going to raise your taxes to pay for things. Okay. And immediately your bill is dead. It's not even sort of on life support. It's dead. And they know this, and they do this with great precision, because people think that their taxes are paying for your bad decisions, or these racists think that they're paying for black and brown people, or these homophobes think they're paying for trans surgeries and transitions and stuff like that, or these wackadoos from the religious right think that they're paying for Sally's abortion. So because we have this sick fantasy that taxes pay for federal funding, by keeping them together, it creates these problems. We have to decouple them. They have nothing to do with one another. You want to have tax bill, you want to talk about how we want to see society not allow the rich to get rich to begin with. We stop it up front. Let's prevent them from acquiring the wealth before we have to tax it away from them, because they can stash that shit in Panama. We already know that, right? So the issue really is, how do we prevent them from getting all that money to begin with? How do we put Pigovian barriers in place that prevent that? So you're exactly right. That's exactly what we should be doing. Not taxes for funding, but taxes for regulation, for regulating society to make it behave in the way in which we want. We don't want the rich to own our government. We don't want the rich to have an oversized ability to impact the carbon footprint. We don't want the rich to have all these things that they do that completely destroy a democracy. So your point is very well taken. I agree with you 100%. And I think that the key there is just to remember that you need to decouple it. As far as the other two questions, Jordan, did you want to take a crack at that one? You remember the one. We'll let him bring up the third.
What was your second one, Chris?
Oh, I was basically saying how that Biden should pass the PRO Act.
Oh, yeah,
because if he's not,
Right.
Also, one
Yeah,
wanted to
and the
mention one
COVID
more
point.
thing. One last thing is I really appreciate you making sure that there's a race component to this, because frankly, I see a lot of people online downplaying it, and it's disgusts me as a leftist.
I got to tell you, I mean, I'm a progressive and I consider myself a leftist, but sometimes the left and their fucking little wonky academia and this like, let me write a dissertation on Jacobin, which, you know, I like Jacobin and stuff like that. But who the fuck are you to say this is a class issue and not a race issue? You're probably not fucking black then. And you're probably not brown. Because let me tell you something. I'm a white guy. I did not grow up rich. I did not grow up poor. Fairly middle class. You know, I had a tutor if I needed it. My family went to Disney World, you know, so I wasn't hurting. And I used to have a view a certain way. But if you go to Flint or you go to Jackson or you go to indigenous reservations, you tell me that it's just a class thing. No, it's not just a class thing. A lot of the state government, governors, mayors, city councils, all of them, they're white. Okay, so whether
ask black people how they feel about the cops only picking on them because of their class.
Right, there's people who are just overtly bigoted, and then there's people that just are just your average white privileged people. They don't wake up saying the N-word, but they have biases. So they look at, like, for example, in Michigan, the Governor Snyder preemptively changed the water pipes in Ann Arbor compared to Flint before there was an issue. What's the difference? Ann Arbor is wealthy and white. But again,
Mike Pence did the same thing.
Exactly. So class and race are intertwined. These people that want to separate them and say, no, Jordan, it's just because they're poor people. Not the case. Rapid fire on the PRO Act. Yeah, Biden's not going to push the PRO Act. The Senate's not going to push the PRO Act because the PRO Act would actually give teeth to organized labor. It would actually give teeth to the National Labor Relations Board. It would actually make it actually much worse than just the fine to Amazon or Starbucks or some of these corporate Goliaths that are union busting. So they're not going to do it because they don't actually want to do that. That's why they pass bipartisan bills that essentially give crumbs. But we see that the people are actually celebrating even for crumbs because Biden's poll numbers are going up now and his approval is going up based on the crumbs that he just delivered in terms of the student loan. I take the point that, yes, for millions of people, it's more than crumbs. But for the most part, he could have done a lot more. So he's not going to do the PRO Act because they don't want the PRO Act. Biden is not a union man. It makes me sick to see the AFL-CIO and these other unions hosting him. Their leadership is either morons or corrupt, because this man has done more, along with other neoliberal Democrats, between NAFTA and normalizing trade relations with China and the repeal of Glass-Steagall, and I could go down the list, to decimate unions and decimate workers than most other people. And thirdly, another thing that makes me sick is this COVID is over thing. I don't know, Steve. I don't know what the label is, but I thought being progressive meant caring about your fellow man and woman. We have a mass disabling event going on now. It's called long COVID. I even hear leftists saying, oh, that's not a thing. Well, call John Hopkins. Try to get an appointment right now in their long COVID unit.
It's propaganda, don't you know? It's propaganda.
And by the way, I mean, I don't know, Steve, you got kids. Would you think it's a good thing for your kid to get the flu 3 times a year? I mean, it's just insane. Sorry, I don't even think I answered you. I just went on a rant. But COVID, I understand. People want to be done with it. I want to be done with it. People want to just go back to life. But it's very similar to what we're dealing with the water situation that we were just talking about. And the mass shootings.
Don't look up.
Yeah, people just normalize things that aren't normal. It's not normal to have toxic water throughout the country and the media not to cover it. It's not normal for mass shootings to happen all the time and the media covers it maybe for a week and then moves on. And it's not normal to have variant after variant after variant and people are getting it 4 or 5 times a year. There's no preventative measures anymore. I don't want to hear a goddamn thing from people who say, it's a cold. Well, it's not a cold for the millions of people that now have long-term disabling effects. Your thoughts, Steve?
Well, you know, I was in the freaking emergency room for almost 2 weeks. I was in the COVID ward, excuse me, not the emergency room, the COVID ward. Walked in the door with my oxygen around 80, and all of a sudden lights were flashed and people were running here and there. And I don't think they were crisis actors, as they pushed me up to the COVID ward, and they did all kinds of shit to try and get me to be able to breathe because I couldn't get oxygen in. That was just 2 weeks of being in the hospital. And then I had 6 months of trying to get my head together. Even now, to this day, I find myself doing some of my lives, and I do a lot of monologuing. And when I do them, I found myself slurring at times. I found myself, my brain moving faster than my mouth moved. And it was like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, this isn't me. I'm telling you, long COVID is a real thing. And these people that didn't have it, that had things to say, things to fucking say, pissed me off so bad. I swear to God, I thought I was dead, Jordan. I mean, literally thought I was dead. And this is not, I don't care. I do care about everybody else's story, but I can tell you empirically about mine. Mine was terrifying. Mine was absolutely terrifying. Coughing up golf ball sized chunks of shit, from your lungs, and then your lungs feeling like dried out parchment paper for forever. I mean, like forever. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Right. And by the way, this Burning Man. Burning Man is like where the hippies go and out west for their conference. Well, it's not a conference, but Burning Man. It's like a show. It's like a retreat,
outdoor.
Yeah, for lefties and commies. And I wish I would have went. My cousin was just there. Pretty much everybody leaving Burning Man right now has COVID, and it was outdoors. So
Jordan, I can tell you that Burning Man is not a leftist event.
Whatever. I don't know much about it. It's talking like a boomer and talking like I'm with the Federalist Society. But
I'm the gray-haired dude here, Jordan.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, listen, unfortunately, like everything else, this became a culture war and it became a political thing when it should have never. We should have taken more draconian measures in the beginning to end it and to shorten it so that we could move on. People could say what they want. Oh, lockdown, this lockdown. You want to know who had a lockdown? China had a real lockdown. Italy had a real lockdown. We had a patchwork, disorganized mess, state to state. And we're going to unfortunately have this for many years. Not only is it going to become a disabling event, it's going to become a bankrupting event for many people. Steve, I don't even want to know what your bills were leaving the hospital because they're not even covering. I mean, they're even trying to remove insurance to cover testing. So it's a big mess. And
I've seen $1 million bills for COVID. And last thing I will say before I pass it off to Michael is I highly disagree with you on the student loan debt thing. I encourage you to look a little bit more into the details. I already know people who are like, oh my God, Biden's the savior, I'm going out to vote, because these people are getting crushed by the student loans. But
I was saying I'm not minimizing the people that did get help. It is a life changer for millions of people. My point is, people are being very, very satisfied, to me, with the bare minimum. That's my point. Not that it's not a great thing. It is a great thing because it did wipe out debt for millions of people. But buyer beware. I'm not convinced it's not going to be shot down in the court. But go ahead, Steve.
Let me jump in there for just a second. The problem with this particular form of debt cancellation isn't that they didn't do good for a few people. The people that he did good for are going to be thrilled to death. It's just like when Donald Trump takes your taxes down by $200, it helps people. No matter how you slice it, people suddenly have more money in their pocket. So it helps, right? So you can certainly make that case. The problem is that there are millions upon millions upon millions of people who have even more than $10,000 of student debt. I want to say this. When a kid goes in, or even an elderly person goes in to fill out those FAFSA forms to go to college, you can sit there and tell somebody, well, it'll be 6 months after you graduate, then you'll have to pay your bill. I'm telling you right now, I have $80,000 worth of student debt in terms of the primary loan that I took out. I owe over $122,000 because of the compounding interest. kids coming out of high school that have no credit history whatsoever would never be eligible for a $50,000 loan without any kind of income, without anything at all to back up their credit worthiness. But they are allowing children walking out of high school to take on $100,000 worth of student debt before they have their first meaningful paying job. That is bullshit. That is usury. That is shady as hell. And because of that, they have left so many people. So many of you all are out there backslapping, patting each other. Oh, look, Biden did this great thing. It's so wonderful. Good job, Joey. Right? But all those people that got left behind, they will never get any help because everybody's too busy doing this shit. While the people that had like just a small amount, 10,000 versus the people with 100,000, you're not missing. You are really missing the big point here. The rest of the people that were really drowning in it, okay, they're literally fucked for life. There's people that are 65 years old, been paying for 30 years and owe more now than they owed when they took it out. And I mean, just keeping it real, there's no cap on the interest. The interest is still compounding. Everything is still happening. Nothing has changed. The next kid that goes to take classes in the fall here is going to have another student debt hanging on his neck. Everything is the same. So, okay, yeah, the people that got help, good job, folks. I'm glad you got help. I always want someone to get help whenever I can. But you left a lot of people, and think about how many people, once you get a little taste, you're done. Think about how many people are fighting for national legalization of marijuana in states where it's been legalized. People have lost the edge. And this is what's going to happen for student debt too.
I also think the broader problem, not with the student loan debt, because I'm for, even if it's 10,000, I'm not minimizing that. It's good. So I agree. Broader problem is all of this media coverage and hubbubaloo about $10,000 in student loan debt. The media doesn't see, I don't see the editorial board of the Washington Post saying peep about all these fucking wealthy people that raided the PPP program that was meant for small businesses and stealing that money. I don't see the Washington Post or the New York Times editorial board saying crickets about all the airlines who got billions of dollars. I don't know, millions or billions, probably millions in relief during the coronavirus relief bill so that they didn't lay off their workers. And what do? They laid off their workers, which is why you have the massive airline delays and cancellations right now with America's mayor, Pete, doing diddly shit about it. Exactly. So do you see the media and these pundits, waxing so concerned about the airline stealing federal money, even though, they're printing it? I could go down the list of all these wealthy people, corporations. They got, the equivalent of $10 billion in cancellation for the money that they got from the federal government. They steal money from poor people. There's never any coverage or criticism of that. But these pundits want to fucking rant about $10,000. Oh, and the working class guy is paying for the, lesbian postdoctorate. No, nobody's paying for anybody's student loan cancellation. Exactly. The government, it's just revenue that's not coming in from the tax, from the students. That's all it is. It's like a tax cut, basically. It's just revenue that won't be coming in back to the federal government, which they don't need because they print the money anyway. Steve, whenever you have to go, you tell me.
Well, let me just say one more thing, because you nailed it. The bottom line is that the school is who the debt was to. The school got paid already. The only thing left is the person owning the loan, which is the federal government. The federal government doesn't need money. It creates money, like Jordan said. So any student debt is too much student debt. That should be the only answer to that question, period. There shouldn't be any hand-wringing or debate. It should just be done.
And any water infrastructure that is over 50 years old can be replaced. The limit is not money. The limit is just time. How long does it take to dig the pipes out? You need to do it during certain seasons of the year. So you can't just snap your finger and replace the busted pipes in America, replace them from lead and galvanized steel to plastic and other less hazardous where, it won't corrode as bad. But the thing that's limiting us is the federal government refuses to print the money for things that will save life. Think about how much money we spend on the military. Taxes don't cover that. Taxes don't pay for that. They're just printing the money for war, and they say because of national security. Well, I think it's a threat to national security if our children are drinking lead, or our expecting mothers are drinking arsenic or PFAS, which is a cancer-causing carcinogen. They're called forever chemicals that are all over the country right now. I mean, I could go on. Bacteria, Legionnaires, all this shit is in our water. That's a national security threat. Does the media care? No. Does the Democratic Party care? No. Does the Republican Party care? No. It's not a culture war to them. So it's just a mess. Steve, I know I've kept you over. Tell people again where they can find you, and then I'll take the next caller.
Sure. So come to realprogressives.org, the website. Please, folks, it's free. Come and just subscribe to Real Progress in Action and Real Progressives on YouTube. You can follow me, of course, on Twitter at SD Grumbine or Austerity is Murder. And of course, please check out the podcast. Drops every Saturday. It's Macro, the letter N, cheese. And you can find it on every major podcasting platform out there. And obviously Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I am the Rogue Scholar on Real Progress in Action. Please follow me there. And then Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern time, you get Grumble. And I think y'all recognize that, right? So please check out Let's Get Ready to Grumble here at Status Coup.
Wait, Steve, we actually have a beautiful calendar now of shows. If you could put that up, Colin. We have a wonderful calendar to show all of Status Coup's programming, because we are moving up, expanding. So there you have me on Mondays, Steve and I live right now, Tuesdays. You got Kim Brown holding it down on Wednesdays. Thursdays, Ron and Tina are co-hosting, followed by Tina's solo show, Right Wing Insanity Report. Friday will be happy hour with me and somebody each week. And then you got Sunday, Let's Get Ready to Grumble. So that 2 o'clock Eastern should fall somewhere around close to halftime if you're an NFL watcher. So you got to watch Steve on Sundays with his wig and 1970s. There you go. His wig and 1970s scholarly explanations of modern monetary theory and other things. I'll tell you, for a topic that could be dry to some people, you really, the last couple of weeks have been banging it up, making it very accessible and entertaining. So 2 o'clock Eastern, Steve, Sundays, no excuse not to watch. And if you want to watch, if you can't watch because you're watching football or something else, click on it and let it play. That helps us in the algorithm, and then go back and watch it later. It's great stuff. Thank you, Steve. I'll see you this weekend. And let me take the next caller. Michael, you've been waiting for a while. You're up.
Hey, Jordan. How's it going?
Hey there.
So it's just weird, this repeating back to me. Anyways, I couldn't hear Steve during that call-in, FYI.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, you kind of already answered my question in your rant. I was going to say, I live close to Baltimore, so I heard about the E. coli breakout. And it's just like, I was going to ask, like, do you think this is like a countrywide problem that's just like a matter of time before every town, every city has dirty water?
I don't think it's a countrywide problem. I know it's a countrywide problem. I don't even say that tooting my own horn, but I've been out and about enough. I mean, I've been to Flint 18 times. I've covered Detroit has toxic water. North Carolina in the Wilmington area, they found PFAS in the water. Baltimore has had lead problems. Pittsburgh has lead problems. Milwaukee has lead problems. Chicago has lead problems. And then there's kind of the problem of you can't find what you're not looking for, right? So if the EPA doesn't really mandate that cities and states test for the full gamut of heavy metals and chemical compounds. So there's very little regulation in what has to be tested for and what you don't have to test for. And then what they are testing for, I mean, cities around the country, water departments have been found to basically cheat on the testing, to basically bump out, like toss out high tests for lead and other things, so that their average is under that level, whatever level it is for lead. There's a certain allowable limit, which is a bullshit number. It should be 0 is allowed, and other contaminants. So there's multiple problems. You have the EPA. A lot of people think it went to shit under Trump. The EPA was always kind of corrupt and problematic. It's like the CDC. It's really meant to the EPA is really meant for corporations and business more than public health. Same thing with CDC, as we've seen throughout COVID. But yeah, there's water problems around the country. I think there's also the problem of, everything Steve and I have been talking about. You have what, in the case of Flint, but other places, in Mississippi, this plant is not a professional water plant. It's badly outdated. Its equipment is outdated. They clearly don't have the right equipment. It's been substandard for years. If you look into the Jackson water crisis, then you have in Jackson the levees. We remember Katrina in Louisiana. The levees failed. Here in Jackson, the levees are outdated. That's why this latest round you had the Pearl River flood, and the levees are not. They need to be replaced. So yeah, there's problems everywhere. I don't want to scare people, but there's very few places that, even in New York City, that has been thought of. A lot of people think of New York City's tap water as the cleanest in the country. We don't have time to air it today, but John Farina, who's a freelancer who we use his stuff from time to time, he got the amazing footage on January 6th for us. He just covered in New York City. They found arsenic in the drinking water at an apartment complex. They didn't tell the residents for 2 weeks. Arsenic, high levels. I covered in Indiana. They had lead in the soil in one apartment complex and in the water 200 times the allowable limit. So yeah, no, this is a widespread problem. But the broader problem, unfortunately, Michael, is our media. Just look at it, right? If I would have done this YouTube live stream on, I don't know, just put some big YouTuber's name in the headline and bashed him, we'd probably have 1,000 live viewers. But if you put water in the headline, you're going to get a lot less, because the algorithm for YouTube, actually recommends certain topics and certain types of things. If you put reacts, all caps, in a headline, it's going to do better on YouTube. If you put, just sensational headlines, calling out other hosts, whatever, that rises in YouTube. If you put water problems, food problems, whatever, that does not rise. And it's not just YouTube. Same thing on Facebook, Twitter, cable news, digital outlets. They don't want to cover this shit. I'm writing a book right now. If I ever get a publisher for it, because I'm writing it and hoping to get a publisher. There's countless examples of media outlets turning me away when I literally brought them smoking gun information on Flint years later. One of them actually asked me, "Is there a Trump angle to this?" Even though he wasn't president. So yeah, there's a major problem, and this is the definition of, it's not a sexy story. But I don't know. I don't know what's more important, honestly, than water, just from a health and life perspective.
Yeah, I feel you there. Water is life. I tell all my friends to listen to you before any other independent media that I listen to, and I listen to all the leftist people. Not even worth going through them. I always say you're my number one. So I appreciate what you're doing, even if it's not sensational.
I appreciate that.
No problem. But I do, from my perspective, it's like I'm drinking tap water that goes through a Brita filter. And I don't live that far from Baltimore. I live close to Fort Detrick, which has been known to put toxic chemicals in water sources. Yeah. So it's like, I should probably just be buying bottled water to keep myself safe at this point, right? But like, what else could I be doing to put my elected officials to task to be testing our water? I guess just call them. Yeah,
I honestly think a lot of it comes down to community. The Flint water crisis would have never even gotten the minuscule media attention it gotten if community members didn't start raising hell. And normally city council meetings were 10 to 20 people came, you had, hundreds of people showing up in the early days, outraged. And that led to media coverage, which then leads to, hopefully action. So it's really at this point kind of an education campaign. Finding out what's in your water, and because there are resources online, which I could post on Twitter or just email me and I could send them to you. But there are resources, A, to find out what's in your water, and then B, spread the word in your community. People need there's a lot of, in communities with water problems, Facebook groups with hundreds of people. And you wouldn't believe the video they're sending out of brown water, discolored water, brown bathtubs. So yeah, before you could do anything, you have to educate people to this is going on, because people generally respond. A lot of people have children, clearly, if they don't know that the water is a problem, and they're not going to know it because A, the media is not covering it in their community, and the politicians either are stupid and don't realize it or know it and bury it. So I think spreading the word is very, very important. And I would say to other media outlets, including independent, I mean, Breaking Point's had me on today on this topic. So they're one of the few that covers these kind of stories, or at least elevates us. But to all the others, I mean, this is important to cover, particularly outlets that have bigger audiences than I. It's important to cover. Not everything has to be capital P politics. There's some issues that might not, be a food fight or might not be cliquey, but are just straight important. And you just cover it because it's the right thing to do. And I think this falls into it. And to the mainstream media outlets that have a shit fuck more resources than I and Status Coup, they should be investigating this, because I got news for you. If all the media outlets tomorrow made this one of the top stories they look into, you would have story after story after story start coming out about lead, arsenic, PFAS, chloroform. I could go down the list. We're not even getting into the naval bases you mentioned, who there's firefighting foam that has leaked into water. You have fracking fluids are leaking into our waterways. Basically, in the industrial buildup of this country, they didn't really think long about the water, the air, the animal life. So yeah, we are definitely suppressed on YouTube because of the topics we cover. I could have changed course years ago and just kind of went for the trendiest shit and just done rants attacking other people, been more reactionary. We'd be doing a lot better. But, I'm kind of stubborn to just cover stuff I find more important. And hopefully at some point, people find us. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, like I said, I think you did awesome work. Before I called into this, I was listening to that RBN rant about crystal ball, and it's just like, I'm so sick of that stuff. But I'm gonna look into my own water sources.
Why are they ranting about crystal ball? What did she do?
She went on Brianna Joy Gray and she said stuff, and they were like, she's talking too much about corporate money. The whole thing is just an infight. But it was because she went on Brianna Joy Gray.
Here's what I think. I don't particularly. I care about results. Okay. If I wanted clicks and money, I would have just covered Donald Trump 24/7 starting in 2016. If I only cared about clicks and money, I probably would just bash the right wing 24/7, because that does very well in media, and ignored the Democrats. So I'm not like, this isn't particularly to RBN, but I would simply say, if you actually believe that the most important topics to cover day in and day out is like other YouTube hosts and other, other media figures, and, occasionally I'll do something on a media person or call them out. It's usually not like my headline. It's just, I just say it in the course of a show. But to channels who believe like they should be carving out endless airtime to like attack YouTube hosts or cover the squad 24/7, or, I think those channels are misguided. it's not for me to tell people what to do. They could cover whatever they want. But there's so many important stories that need to be covered. And I don't particularly think like Crystal Ball versus Brianna Joy is one of them.
I couldn't agree more.
To tell you the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely going to look into my water sources more because of you. So I appreciate you for.
I mean, there's
really
some channels that are just open about it, like the Vanguard guys who I like. They just say, "Listen, we're here for the drama, and that's what we do." And I respect the truth in the truth in what they are. And I watch them sometimes just because, everyone's human, and sometimes you just want to watch something that's a little lighter and more of a food fight and drama. But for other channels that are like casting themselves as news, but this is what they're covering. I mean, give me a break. Occasionally, sure, but like fucking, there's no water in Mississippi right now. There's no water in Jackson. Flint doesn't have clean water after 8 years. I could go down the list of stories.
Baltimore doesn't have clean water now.
Exactly. Actually, I'll say this. Before everything happened with TYT and I was fired, I was actually planning a long reporting trip that I was trying to convince Cenk to do, or to let me do, kind of called Water Wars, where I'd go around the country, as long as I could and as much as they could afford, to cover different sections of the country that had water problems other than Flint, because obviously I had been covering Flint a lot already. I probably had been planning it for like 2 or 3 weeks. I had a couple cities lined up already, and planning these trips, it's a lot to try and like reach out to activist groups and figure out the geography of where you're going to go, and all that. So that's something I've always wanted to do. I figured maybe we could even make it into like a mini doc. Obviously, I didn't last there, and I haven't been able to do it here, just money and time. But I would love at one point to be able to go on a reporting tour just to cover water. It definitely would not go viral because of everything we've talked about, but I think it's important because eventually the chickens are going to come home to roost. And it's not just the poor people, because the infrastructure is old in a lot of places. I think wealthier suburbs might be a little surprised at some of the shit in their water too. I appreciate your kind words, and I don't like giving health advice at all. That's not my role, but I would say to people like you who are interested, unfortunately, this also comes down to money. People who have the means to get, full home filtration, reverse osmosis, under their sink or at the point where the water enters their home to have a full water filtration system. That's the optimal thing, but that could run you thousands of dollars to do that. So that, to me, and again, I don't want people to be taking health advice from me, you need to look into it for yourself, but that's the best way of doing it. That's what a lot of people in Flint, not through themselves because they're broke and poor, but through donations and whatnot. A lot of people in Flint got reverse osmosis systems or water filtration systems. A lot of the businesses got full water filtration systems. It's sad that you have to do that in the wealthiest country on earth. Like Steve said over and over again, the federal government has the means to dig up this whole fucking country. It would create a lot of jobs too. They just don't do it because we live in the United Corporations of America, and why do big things that could help people? So definitely you should actually send us the information, because I'll send it to Kim. She's in Baltimore, or right next to Baltimore. So she might be interested in that. Kim Brown.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely start looking into the water sources here. In Frederick, around Fort Detrick. I know certain places in the town get, I still don't think they have clean water because of Fort Detrick, but I don't think that extends far enough or wide enough. So I'm going to start looking into it more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks, Michael. And
Thank you.
I'm going to wrap the call-in portion. So I'm going to end the call-in and get back just to YouTube. How do I do that? 222. All right. You know what? Honestly, while we still have the audience, I might as well play this. Colin, if we could play in New York City, which is thought to be some of the safest water in the country. Everyone thinks New York City tap water is very safe. If you could show this article first, this is from the local ABC there. Probe continues into discovery of arsenic in drinking water at New York City Housing Authority complex. New York City Housing Authority is low-income affordable housing throughout the city. It's usually underfunded, and it's mostly poor Black and brown people. But a federal monitor has told the city to keep all documents related to the investigation into dangerous levels of arsenic in tap water at a New York City Housing Authority complex in the East Village. Where did I go? Throughout the holiday weekend, thousands of tenants at the Jacob Reese houses were forced to use bottled water and portable water stations after being told not to drink or cook with the water from their taps. New York City Housing Authority started testing the water a few weeks ago after reports of cloudy water. On Friday, test results revealed traces of arsenic. On Sunday, a test did not find elevated levels. And on Monday, the result of additional and more precise testing came back negative for arsenic. The thing about this, they knew they had high levels of arsenic, and the New York City Housing Authority and the politicians did not tell the residents for weeks. For weeks. Remember, in Flint, the governor and his administration, the governor of Michigan, they knew for over a year that the water was toxic, and they helped cover it up. So John Farina, who's a freelance video journalist who does a lot of great stories, we purchased some of his interviews. He was just at this apartment complex. We're going to play a longer video. We're going to play a longer thing later in the week. But here is just one interview he did at this complex that they just found alarming levels of arsenic in the water, and they didn't tell the residents for several weeks.
I'm Stacy Hemby. I'm a Nitro resident. I live here for 4 years now. Me and my 2 girls, they have autism. And this has been very stressful. You know, every day they asking me, Mommy, when I can take a shower? Mommy, when is the water gonna be okay? Mommy, when is this gonna be normal again? It's just stressful because the little things that we take for granted, to brush our teeth, to take a shower, we can't do that right now. We have to boil water. It takes like 4 bottles of water to boil 1 pot. And that's all day. That's all I'm doing, to cook, to clean, to wash clothes. That's hard, especially on me. I'm a single mother, so I do it all. And it's stressful. I cry about this. This is like going on the 4th day that this been like this. But the water had been messed up before. The water was cloudy. The water, you turn it on, it's brown. Debris coming out of it. And I'm like, because I have a Brita filter upstairs, so I checked I tested it. Like, I poured the water out the filter, water, clear. I go to tap water, debris, cloudy, brown, smelly. And I kept noticing, like, because I have medical conditions, and I kept getting stomach aches, headaches, and I'm like, no, I gotta go to the doctor because something wrong here. It's not right. I don't normally drink water out the filter, but I do cook with it, you know. So I kept noticing, like, after I eat, I feel funny, and I'm like, what is going on? You know, When did you notice? I noticed this about a month ago, because they kept coming here, they turn off the water. They turn it off from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the evening. And then one day they came back again. They turned it off at 10 o'clock in the morning and it didn't come back on until 12 o'clock. And they kept saying, oh, we're flushing the water. I seen a sign on my elevator saying that they were testing the water for E. coli. That's it. Now, they didn't tell us that. I saw that. So I'm like, that's another thing that popped in my head. I said, if you testing it for E. coli, you gotta be testing it for other stuff. And now, then I was asleep. My neighbor called me to come downstairs on Sunday, like, don't drink the water, don't do this. And I'm like, it's crazy.
You know, New York City water has always been praised as the best and cleanest water.
Exactly.
Do you think that there's other issues and people just don't know about it?
I think so. I think so. And I think now that you guys are here and that everyone is hearing about it, that hopefully something gets done. Because it's not fair to us. You know, it's not fair. We pay our rent. I do right by the community. We shouldn't be living like this. It's not fair. You know?
If you had a message for the mayor, what would it be?
Mayor Adams, please fix this water, please. My kids start school on Thursday. I gotta wash hair. I gotta get clothes ready. I gotta do all of that. And I can't do the normal things because we have poison in the water. Please do something about it, please. That's all I'm asking.
$11 billion. $11 billion is the New York City Police Department budget. And they got arsenic in the water in a low income apartment complex. And by the way, I don't think it's just that. I don't think it's that. Just that community. Great interview with John. We're going to have, I think he has 40 to 45 minutes of interviews from this complex. Do you see anyone else covering this? Have you heard about this? By the way, shout out to my wife. I don't give her enough credit. She sent me this story. So got to give her a shout out. The lovely Mrs. Chariton, if you're watching. She sent me this story in New York City. This is happening everywhere, folks. And the media, you know, can't be bothered. Let's cover Trump 24/7. Listen, we cover Trump when we need to. I do think the Mar-a-Lago raid and all this shit is news. That's why I've covered it. But I don't know. Can we find some time to cover, you know, arsenic and lead and PFAS and chromium, bacteria, fracking fluid, God knows what else is being found in the water. And again, who do you keep seeing this happen to? Do you see a pattern of what these folks look like? So spare me that it's just a class issue and it's nothing to do with race. And by the way, when government officials know information, when government officials know information that has to do with their constituents' health, when government officials know information that could be poisoning children and they withhold the information even for an hour, to me, that should be a crime. Because they knew about this for weeks before they told the people in this apartment complex. So we're going to have all that. Now, Colin, if we could put back up that schedule. Folks, I'm going to make a direct ask. If you are not yet a Status Coup member, please sign up. We are trying to expand here. All of this costs money. You got me on Mondays, got to pay people. Steve, Kim, Tina, Ron, Spencer Snyder, who's doing great work for us. He's doing a video series for us every week called Breaking News. Emphasis on the breaking. Kind of our media is broken. Obviously, the on-the-ground reporting. We're paying Lewis in Mississippi. We have not magically found a money tree, folks. We still don't take money from the banks, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military-industrial complex, the corporate vultures who have bought the Democratic Party or Republican Party. We had a small, as I always say, we had a small investment in 2018, 50 grand from a viewer. That's gone. It was gone right away, actually, because we had to buy equipment. And at the time, we brought Ty on. Okay? Since then, it's been GoFundMe and membership. So if you have the means, if you don't, we understand because inflation and other things. But if you have $5 to $10 a month, that's all we're asking. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member. We, the Labor Day rally we just covered. Got to pay Ty. The live view, Colin, come on here for a second. The live view that we use, okay? The live view that we use to go live in places, I just got a bill from them Suddenly we have a $3,500 yearly maintenance fee. Okay. I wrote back to them, hey, I'm not CNN. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Live View is the mobile satellite we use, the audience. Every month we pay about $500, $600 for the data and the server. It's not cheap. Even if we're not on the ground that month that much, we got to pay it. And now they're magically offering, telling us we have a $3,500 bill to pay. So there's a lot of costs connected to this, which is part of why a lot of outlets don't do it, because it's much cheaper, Colin, to just put one idiot and another idiot together and them argue and, be sensational. So there's a lot of costs here. Obviously, we're paying people to host. We don't want Status Coup just to be me. I'm going to be taking some time off also in the fall to work on my book. So we need you. So if you can become a member, please sign up. Did I leave anything out as far as costs, Colin?
Probably there's a lot of costs, but you got the main stuff.
Yes. It's very expensive to do this. It's very expensive to cover things on the ground. By the way, most of the trips we take, other than trips that, Breaking Points helps us, that's part of our partnership. They help us with funding. We're not like making money on these trips. We're usually losing money by going on these trips. And I personally have been taking less. Personally, I am taking less so that we could expand. So please support us if you can. StatusCoup.com/join. We're going to do our members call. What's today? Tuesday. Probably going to do it early next week because this week I'm pretty busy. So probably going to do our members call next week. We got some other things in the works right now for on the ground reporting. Lewis is going to be on the ground all week for us, possibly longer, covering the Jackson, Mississippi water crisis. Another important thing you could do, sign up for our text message list. That's free. Sign up for our text message list, statuscoup.com/text. So you could get a text message when we're live, because a lot of times YouTube doesn't notify for every stream. statuscoup.com/text. But definitely become a member. And also go to get some swag, statuscoup.com/store. Get some swag at statuscoup.com/store. We got a lot of great things. You could get your United Corporations of America shirt. That's a hot item. You could get your Fossil Fuckers shirt. You could, Colin, what's the other merchandise store that they could go to for hats and phone covers and posters and everything else?
I forget what it's called now. Teespring. You can see it. It's on our YouTube channel now. It's actually linked. So if you go to our main YouTube channel and click the store tab, you can see some of that stuff.
Right. And hey, like I said, we're trying to grow. So help us afford this. You got me on Mondays, Steve and I today. Kim will be tomorrow. And Thursdays, you got Ron and Tina co-hosting at 5 o'clock. And then Tina's Right-Wing Insanity Report, which is fucking awesome. I've been enjoying that. Fridays will be me and somebody for Happy Hour and Haters. And then we have Steve on Sundays at 2 o'clock Eastern. And we have Spencer Snyder doing breaking news and the on-the-ground reporting, of course. So this is all not cheap. So, yeah, help us if you can. Help us if you can. All right, got to go walk the dog. Let me give hold on. Make sure I didn't miss anything here.
Don't forget.
Oh, yes, Super Chats. Hold on. Okay, Super Chats. Alisa, $10. Wig fund money for Steve and Jordan's babies or babies' daycare expenses. Steve and I are having a baby? Damn, that would be good internet if Steve and I were having a baby. Yes, money for Steve's wig fund. I would like that. Please let me know if you have intel on Steve and I having a baby. I'm interested. Tony, $5. Hi, Jordan. Is there any way the federal government could send money directly to cities instead of the governor? Yes, there is. But through bureaucratic nonsense, they send it to state governors. But yeah, they could, if they wanted, they could just send it directly to the city. Sir Switch Cookington, $15. Jordan is based. Why, thank you. I've been called a lot of things. Not often that, but I appreciate it. Boeing pilot, $10. Great job. Could Steve please suggest resources to better understand MMT, or does Steve have videos explaining it? Great show. He had to go. Definitely check out his channel, Real Progress in Action. I'm pretty sure there's resources that could direct you. Also, realprogressives.org, I believe it is. They probably have resources for MMT. One of the best resources for MMT is Stephanie Kelton. She's a professor and author of The Deficit Myth. Stephanie Kelton is great. Lauren Mosler, I think his name is also good. Double K, 1999. Love that Colin is back. Yes, we do too. I did not enjoy doing shit myself without Colin. Loner Weirdo, €2. Thank you for being a loner and a weirdo together. Thanks everybody. Tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern, Kim Brown will be hosting, and then Thursday, Ron and Tina. I'm doing a couple things behind the scenes. We'll have Lewis on the ground from Mississippi. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care.